Now, the second part, which we also touched upon, the feedback loops, because we just didn't describe them properly as needed. There are positive feedback loops, which we just touched upon, which we call them the reinforcing. This is, and you see a plus sign. A plus sign is an indication of positive, where an action creates a result that influences more of the same action. And I know I probably better explain it over a diagram, which means if A increases, B increases, and if B increases, A increases. It's like an escalation.
Or compounding growth.
Or compounding growth. You have better examples, Tim, so help me out. So an increase in the variable leads to an increase in the linked variable. And we saw that the infectious people infecting others, and then infected increases the infectious, and more infectious infecting others.
So in a COVID case, one of the dangers here is we have communities that haven't had many infections, and they may think, well, we just got 10. What's the big deal? Or now we've got 25. Well, now we've got 100. And you're saying this compounding growth means that can be deceptive. Low numbers very early on can really begin increasing them dramatically.
Exactly. So small numbers is a blessing, but we shouldn't wait for an increase, because it could escalate very quickly, because it's a part of a reinforcing loop. It's not just adding cases, it's multiplication. So it can explode very quickly. Okay. And that's counterintuitive to how we typically think about things. And that's where the danger is. The second type of loops is a negative feedback loop, or we call it, another naming is a balancing feedback loop, where an action that attempts to achieve a goal, to close a gap, like if I also, I mean, I'm good at explaining things with diagrams, not with words. If I see an increase in one variable actually leads to a reduction in another variable, as we have seen. As we have more people infected, we have less people susceptible to infection because they're already drained. And that kicks the balancing feedback loop, because this cannot grow forever. It's actually reducing, because I'm reaching a target of 0. As I infect more people, their numbers decrease, and then I reach somehow a goal that is the end of that draining of.
So you've covered 2 feedback loops. Are there any other kind of feedback loops?
I'll give the example. Maybe if I talk about the examples, then
Sure.
We can see how they can look like. Let me give the example of the
fish,
from the fish populations. As we have more fish, we have more birth or recruitments, they call it in the literature sometime, and this could apply in different contexts. This is a positive feedback loop, and it has a growth behavior. So we can link a growth behavior to a positive feedback loop. A negative feedback loop is death. I mean, as we have more fish, we have more death, and we have more death, we have less number of fish. And that's a negative feedback loop. And that results in a decline. Now, the other one would be if we combine them together. And the simplest combination is just to put, that is easy to illustrate, is a reinforcing and a balancing. So fish grows with birth or recruitment, and they decline with death. And that is a combined feedback loop. Now, the behavior that results from this is not as straightforward as this one, that, hey, positive feedback loop, growth, negative feedback loop, decline. It depends. If the positive feedback loop is greater than the negative feedback loop, we have growth. If they are equal, we have equilibrium, means death is equal to birth. We have equilibrium. If we have more death than recruitment or birth, then we have a resulting decline in the behavior. Does that answer your question about if there is other feedback loops, Tim?
So, yeah, so there's 2 kinds of feedback loops, but you can combine them into different combinations. How is there a limit on how many? Could you get 5 or 6 feedback loops all combined together?
They can be, it can be combined. So I don't know if I can say, but it's endless. You can, life, it's complexity.
Right. So it starts simple, but you can add more. And if we wanted a more detailed model, we might add more and different feedback loops. Like if the fish, we could have the available food supply, or we could have the temperature of the water. These could be represented as, so you've talked about stocks and flow are the structure. The feedback loops is what exists between the structure that determines the dynamics. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's this link between these elements that generates that behavior, and we call them this the feedback loops.
Great. Appreciate your time today. If you have any questions on structured systems thinking, have a problem you'd like our help on, or want to know more about developing your own capabilities in systems thinking, please reach out at the email below. We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in what we do and want to follow our journey, I've added our LinkedIn and Twitter information. And we plan to regularly update this channel with quick tips and case studies to help you get the most out of your systems thinking and lean efforts. If you want to be notified whenever we add new video content, please consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the red subscribe button below this video.